we will tell you that Dr. Emmons is a professor of psychology at the University of California, Davis. He has taught since 1988. He is the author of nearly 150 original publications in peer-reviewed journals or chapters, and has written or edited 5 books, including The Psychology of Ultimate Concerns, The Psychology of Gratitude, and Thanks, How Practicing Gratitude Can Make You Happier. His highly anticipated new book, Gratitude Works, a 21-day program for creating emotional prosperity, will be released on April 9th, 2013. Bob, that happens to be my dad's birthday, so you have a good omen there. I will get him a copy. All right, awesome. A leader in the positive psychology movement, Dr. Emmons is the founding editor and editor-in-chief of the Journal of Positive Psychology. Dr. Emmons has received research funding from the National Institute of Mental Health, John Templeton Foundation, and the National Institute on Disability and Rehabilitation Research. Research has been featured all over the media around the world. Dr. Emmons lives with his wife, Yvonne, and their 2 sons, Adam and Garrett, in Davis, California. It's my pleasure to introduce one of my personal favorite positive psychology leaders and researchers, Dr. Robert Emmons. Hi, Bob.
David, thank you very much. It's very kind of you for the nice warm introduction. Hello to everyone listening in, wherever you're at, this afternoon, this evening. It's great to be with you, especially the week after Thanksgiving. What a great time of year to think about gratitude and think about where we are in the science of gratitude. And can I confirm that my slides are being seen by folks?
Yeah, we see him right there, Bob. Looks good.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. So, what I thought I would do for this short time that we're together is just give you all an update, sort of an overview of where we are right now in the science of gratitude. I'm assuming that most of you who are listening are pretty much familiar with the recent research on gratitude and positive psychology, gratitude and subjective well-being, flourishing, and happiness, life satisfaction. I don't want to review and rehash all of those findings, but really talk about a larger perspective of where gratitude is at and where it's going, and perhaps think about some broader themes, thinking about the future, the nature of gratitude. So, one of the points I like to make when I give a talk to a public audience about gratitude is I begin with this thesis, that gratitude has the power to heal, to energize, and to change lives. And in other words, that gratitude works. And that's why we entitled this webinar, Gratitude Works, because gratitude does have these potentials. Now, I know this is a significant claim, but I think it's also defensible. When we look at the last decade of research on the nature of gratefulness, what it is and what it can do, that it does have these potentialities, that it does deliver what it promises to. So I like to start with this, and then I like to demonstrate that it has all of these properties. Again, I know a lot of you are familiar with the basic research at gratitude. I'm not going to go into all of that, but this is my starting point. I just want to put that out there. Now, I like to think about gratitude in terms of 2 stages of information processing. I know there are many definitions, many different perspectives on gratitude, and but I like to start from this foundation here. That gratitude involves, first of all, affirming that you look at life, you look at the world, you look around us, and we say yes to life. We make an affirmation that there are good things, there is some goodness in the world. So that's the first stage. Secondly, we recognize where the sources of these good things, this goodness, comes from. We realize that it doesn't come entirely from within, but rather is a result of the beneficial actions of other people or other moral agents, as we refer to those in some of our writings, the intentional gifts given by others for our benefit. We look around, we acknowledge the contributions that others have made to our well-being, and that creates in us a feeling of gratitude. So that's where I like to start. Now, gratitude is a fascinating concept. The more I study it, the more I examine it, there's so many layers and levels to it. It's very complex, and psychology does not have a monopoly on the topic of gratitude. One of the fascinating things about gratitude is that it transcends traditional disciplinary boundaries. And so, some years ago, when I co-edited a book on psychology of gratitude published by Oxford with my colleague Mike McCullough, we got contributions from people from a wide variety of different disciplines, from moral philosophy, from religious studies, evolutionary psychology, sociology, anthropology, field of medicine, and of course within psychology, particularly emotion theory, personality, social psychology, each of these disciplines has provided a different window, different angle on the nature of gratitude, what it is, and why it matters. And so that's very exciting to see all of these different disciplines coming together and saying, there's something really important about gratitude. So we need to understand what role it plays in human nature. Within psychology, the science of gratitude has evolved. And so a graduate student of mine put together this chart showing the evolution, the growth in studies, research articles, peer-reviewed tips based on PsycInfo. And as you can see, up until about 10 years ago, very little, less than 10 articles per year published that had anything to do with gratitude. And now, starting roughly 2003, you see a slow increase peaking in the last couple of years. The science of gratitude is really growing. We still have a long way to go, but significant progress is being made. When I first started doing research on gratitude in the late 90s, and I referred to gratitude as the forgotten factor in happiness research and more largely psychological research. I don't think we can say that anymore. It's no longer the forgotten factor. We're starting to see a good development, a good explosion of research on gratitude. And one of the nice things is that gratitude is really at the crossroads of science and practice, that there are practical ways in which we can make research findings of interest to people who are interested in becoming better people, becoming happier, and developing ways to flourish in their lives. And so we've seen a lot of media attention in some of these key opinion-leading print media, which is nice, as well as in trade books as well. So here's just a small sampling of books written for general audiences that take the science of gratitude and frame it in ways which make it accessible. And it's fairly accessible anyway. It's not, it's not quantum physics, but it's nice to see because the average person is not reading scientific articles, but they are going to gravitate toward books that are written from a more general perspective. Now, these are only ones which are really report the research on gratitude. There's others, of course, that have been published based upon people's, year-long odysseys where they go and they thank everyone who's ever had an impact upon them, not including those from the books, rather those that take the findings and distill them for general audience. One of the interesting things about gratitude in what's published in some of these major print media is that there are headlines that have appeared, such as these. Now, take a look at some of these headlines. See what they have in common. Want to be happier? Be more grateful. The formula for happiness. Gratitude plays a part. My favorite is the first one. The key to happiness is gratitude, and then maybe locked out. Now, if this was more interactive and I could see you, I would ask you, what do these all have in common? And hopefully you'd say something like, well, happiness, right? All of these have to do with the link between gratitude and happiness. Gratitude has certainly been welcomed by the happiness industry. Gratitude plays a part in the cultivation of happiness. And each of these headlines includes the explicit assumption that gratitude should be a part of any 12-step, 30-day, 10-key program, 7 effective habits of happy people, and so on. Which is interesting because I think that if we limit gratitude to its role that it plays in happiness, we're really underestimating its potential. Gratitude should not be reduced to a tactic for becoming happier. I call this the gratitude light, that's LITE approach. Simply counting blessings, writing down things you're grateful for. Well, yes, it certainly will tend to increase a person's happiness. We've shown that in research studies that we've done. It does matter for happiness, and I've published some studies on that. But I think there's much more gratitude than just a tactic for becoming happier. I don't think it does justice to the richness and potential of it if we limit it to a gratitude-like approach. After all, gratitude has been referred to as the greatest of the virtues. Someone else referred to it as the key that opens all doors. Albert Schweitzer, the great humanitarian, said that gratitude is the secret to life. He said the person who discovers this has learned what it means to really live, that he's penetrated the mystery of existence. So it's got to be much more than just a way of becoming happier. There's many different layers and levels of gratitude. And I think that's going to be the next generation of research, is examining the ways in which gratitude matters, quite apart from happiness. Now, to help out with the next generation of research, the John Emmons Foundation provided major funding for a big initiative entitled Expanding the Science and Practice of Gratitude, and about a $6 million initiative that I helped to write, and thanks to their generosity, this was funded. There's many different components to this initiative. There's three basic goals of it. First goal is to expand the scientific database of gratitude, especially in the areas of health, well-being, happiness, and also in terms of developmental science, the development of gratitude in children, youth, and adolescents. That's one goal. The second goal was to promote evidence-based practices of gratitude in various settings, such as medical settings, educational settings, schools, organizational settings, workplace, homes, communities, prisons, religious institutions. The list goes on and on. What are the practices that can be used to increase gratitude in these settings, and why would it matter? What difference would it make? What would some of the outcomes be in these settings? And then third is kind of a more general goal. That's been my goal for the last dozen years since I began studying gratitude. Just to get the concept out there, getting serious people to have serious discussions about the role of gratitude in civil society. It's a good thing. We need more of it. How do we increase it? Are there some drawbacks? What's the role of gratitude, in current life, in modern life? That's the overall goal of this objective. And one part of the initiative has been a competition, research competition, partnering with UC Davis on this, the Greater Good Science Center in Berkeley. And roughly half of the $6 million is going to support 14 projects that were selected from a competitive process last spring, early summer. We reviewed nearly 300 letters of intent received from people, scientists all over the country, who want to research some aspect of gratitude in a variety of settings. Health, development, health includes medicine, development, social context, such as close relationships, and the practice of gratitude in some of those settings that I mentioned. 63 full proposals were invited. 14 projects were ultimately selected for funding. We evaluated each of those based on mutual criteria of significance, approach methods, capacity to success, potential influence, and so on. 14 projects ranging from $168,000 to $338,000, this was the funding level, were supported for a period of 2 years. Now, the next two slides, I'll show you the list of the award winners. If you need more about these, by the way, you go to the Greater Good website, click on some of the gratitude links to read more about the initiative and about the competition process. But 14 projects were selected, which cut across these various domains. Everything from basically neuroscience to monkey science. Right? There's research on looking at the neural systems that support processing of gratitude. There's research on chimpanzees and giving and receiving of benefits, and how gratitude might be a important link there that allows for reciprocity. And some of it is on social relationships. There's a lot of exciting research on the area of medicine and health. For example, populations of patients of acute medical events, looking at gratitude, trying to connect sophisticated biomarkers, health outcomes, medical outcomes. So 14 projects were selected. They've been funded, the research has begun. This is where the cutting edge science is right now. So any hot new findings you want, these are the people to talk to, people to contact, find out what they're doing, what's going to be done about gratitude over the next 2 years. About a year from now, next October, we're going to have a meeting. There's going to be a conference at Berkeley. So look for information on that on the Greater Good website. This will be a meeting that people can attend and come learn what's being discovered by these researchers, maybe expanding the science by gratitude project. So there's a list there. Okay, another phase of the initiative are dissertation research projects. We're funding, and when I say we, I mean the Emmons Foundation, Greater Good Science Center, in collaboration with UC Davis, funding graduate students for 1 year of research on gratitude. We've just, as of yesterday, approved 8 proposals to be funded. Those will be announced December 1st. So I don't have the information today because I don't think people have been notified yet. But we've just approved 8 proposals for graduate student research funding in the same areas in terms of social relationships, health, development. So trying to expand the science on some major fronts as well as the dissertation research projects as well. So it's just exciting to see that there are funds are available to keep moving science and strategy forward. Okay, another component. So there's 4 components of this initiative: research competition for the large award dissertation project, and then this is the Global Gratitude Journal that is being organized by the Greater Good Science Center. So this is off their website, thanks4.org. There's some information there that the goal is that we could actually put together a huge data set, a huge international, sort of like the worldwide happiness database. This would be a worldwide gratitude database. People could sign in, fill out questionnaires, write lists of what they're grateful for. You could look at it at various levels. It could be a research tool that people could use, given the information that's being acquired here in terms of looking at differences between nations, differences between people of different ages, religious groups, ethnicities, the nature of what people are grateful for. It's a huge database being put together here by the Greater Good Science Center, addressing some of these questions that you see. It just launched in November. It's still going through some tweaking, some design issues, trying to make it a little bit better, I think, based on initial feedback that's being received from people who are signing and taking it. But its overall goal is to provide this global gratitude journal, much like we have people journal in our studies, small numbers of people, a couple hundred tops. But this is hopefully going to go much larger than that, going global here. So that's the 3rd component of the initiative. Now the 4th component, the last one, which is some of the research I'm doing now with some colleagues in various locations, is examining gratitude in children and adolescents. The science of gratitude I mentioned and showed you that figure really showed an expansion in the last 10 years. We undertook a similar analysis with kids, and you don't see it. You don't see that increase 10 years ago. Very small increase, but it's so small. It looks very different, this chart, which is exciting because it shows there's a tremendous opportunity. So little work has been done on gratitude in children. So what's the developmental aspect of gratitude? Just we know very little about it. Even in the field of character education, here's a cover of a book on building character in kids, and look at all the qualities, all sorts of good things: courage, justice, equality, empathy, kindness, forgiveness, giving. Don't see gratitude on there, do you? There's no gratitude. It's not a part of many different character education programs. So it really has been ignored when it comes to looking at people earlier developmentally. So that's what we're trying to do in this study, series of studies we call the Youth Gratitude Project, in collaboration with Dr.Robert at Hofstra University and Giacomo Bono down in Cal State in Los Angeles. And we're going to be examining, we have been examining gratitude in kids, families, and educational settings, trying to see if some of the benefits of gratitude that we see in adults also occur at the level of kids. Now, of course, there's some challenges there in terms of measuring it, so forth, and measuring outcomes. They might look different in someone who's 8 versus 18 versus 80 years old, but it's all part of the excitement of examining within a new population. When does gratitude emerge? That's a question. Here's a young infant. Was happy, right? But you wouldn't say, oh my, he looks grateful. We don't tend to attribute gratitude as an emotional state to instant. Gratitude seems to emerge somewhere in middle childhood between the ages of 7 and 10, because they have to have certain capacities there to feel empathy, to have a theory of mind, to know that other people are providing them with a benefit for their own well-being, and so on. So it's not something that's going to emerge early on in life. And we're trying to identify what gratitude looks like in kids. How do you measure this? What's the role of gratitude in youth development? What sort of socialization agents can foster gratitude? How do they do that? How is gratitude taught, for example? Are there school-based interventions that can promote increases in gratitude? Is there a critical period when gratitude is first transmitted from older to younger generations? And then we want to look at the issue of why does gratitude matter? Are there key outcomes, maybe not even limited to the domain of well-being, but perhaps school success, service, resiliency, health behaviors, reduction of problematic behaviors like risk-taking or drug, alcohol use, and so on. So a large number of things we're going to examine with respect to gratitude in kids. Now, we did a study a few years ago published in the journal School Psychology, which we replicated our finding that counting blessings matters through 6th and 7th graders, and we found that classes were assigned to gratitude intervention actually showed benefits relative to classes who did a variety of control exercise. For example, those who kept gratitude journals showed increases in optimism, life satisfaction overall, as well as domain specific. They just were more engaged with school. They liked the teachers better. There was a short-term follow-up as well showing a positive effect. So this is the first study we tried to demonstrate some sort of connection to outcomes. But well, isn't this great? Isn't this information that schools would want to know? Parents would want to know this. Certainly schools would want to know this. And we've been contacted by many different school districts, and they want to develop some sort of gratitude curriculum. So we have a gratitude lesson plan that we've been sharing with them. We want to try to do a systematic series of studies, though, to see what difference gratitude can make within school settings. We can continue to find some excellent information that school psychologists, counselors, educators are going to be able to learn some practical strategies from gratitude intervention at the school level, and raising public awareness about the importance of teaching youth how to be grateful, creating an awareness of the importance of gratitude in national surveys. It's all part of this larger project. So that's the fourth component of the initiative. So the RFP for researchers, that's underway. Those awards have been made. People are doing their research. The dissertation awards being announced this weekend. The Global Gratitude Journal, which went live in November. And then our research on gratitude in youth, which is at various stages of completion. We'll say a little bit more about that. This is an essay, a quote from an essay. I really like this, from a high school student who we asked to reflect on the nature of gratitude. And you can see some of the themes that they discuss. There's some debate about the nature of students these days. Are they less or more grateful than they were a generation ago? Are they more or less narcissistic? There's been some research showing that students are more entitled now than ever before. Well, you certainly see elements of gratefulness. It's not that hard to find. And I think this essay is reflective of a number of different perspectives on thankfulness that you rarely see in research, and you can find it. We find that gratitude has benefits. That one study, we have some data showing they report a higher cookie point average. They want to be more involved in their neighborhood, and in society, they want to contribute more. There's an urge there to do something good, to give back the goodness that they receive. That's a critically important element of gratitude that sometimes get ignored when we only focus on the well-being in terms of personal happiness. We have a gratitude curriculum that we showed with children between the ages of 8 and 11, third to 6th graders, found that behaviorally, they actually were more likely to write thank you cards in response to the presentation they saw in the classroom if they have been taught about the importance of gratitude relative to a control. So we see positive benefits both subjectively as well as behaviorally. So that's some of the exciting research that's going on there. Now, we're not doing it all by ourselves. There's a organization known, some of you are familiar with it, it's called Child Trends, a nonprofit out of Washington, D.C. And they have a Flourishing Children Project. They're identifying positive indicators. They're trying to put together a list of positive indicators, measuring this at a nationally representative level, including things like spirituality, life satisfaction, tolerance, empathy, basically the character strengths that we're all familiar with. And gratitude is one of those. And so they have some data based on their questionnaire they use, modify some of our work on gratitude, and have given this to roughly 2,000 teenagers between the ages of 12 and 17, along with their parents. And I have some interesting findings to report. For example, I'll just show you one slide with some findings, that the more grateful kids relative to the less grateful ones, less likely to get into fights in school, less likely to smoke, less likely to be depressed, okay? Slightly higher grades. So this sort of dovetails with our research showing benefits of gratitude. Teenagers, we're studying it as young as 7 and 8 years old. Some promise here, but we still have a lot of work to do. We still don't know exactly at what age does gratitude reliably emerge. Are there parenting practices which promote or conversely prevent development of gratitude? Are there other outcomes we have yet to explore that gratitude produces in homes and schools, and how to best educate for gratitude in schools? Are there certain practices that are more effective than others, and how can those be implemented in classroom situations? So a lot of work still to be done. Some of the work we're doing is looking at parenting practices. We believe there's a triad of practices that are going to be effective in influencing the development of gratefulness. Coaching and teaching is one of those. Here's a diagram that shows bidirectional influence between those three practices. So there's coaching and teaching strategy. There's modeling of gratitude. Parents often say, how can I get my kids to be more grateful? That's one of the most common questions I get. And of course, a big part of it is they themselves are grateful, so the modeling of the grateful behavior. And then the third component is reinforcing. How do you handle the child's display of gratitude or, conversely, lack of gratitude? So it's been shown that these three practices are important for increasing emotion knowledge in kids, increasing their social emotional competence. So we're just taking research that's already been used within the development of emotions, including empathy in kids, trying to see if it also applies to understanding the development of gratitude. The evidence looks good so far that gratitude promotes good outcomes in youth. Bill Damon, in his book, The Path to Purpose, he talks about developing noble purpose, trying to accomplish something that is useful outside of oneself. He said the sense of gratitude for being able to partake in what the world has to offer, to have a chance to make one's own contribution, is common in those with a sense of purpose. So we have some research that's examining this link between gratefulness and purposefulness in youth. We have some longitudinal data that we reported at the recent IPPA convention in Orlando last August, where we had 700 students between the ages of 10 and 14, and we administered gratitude scale and some other measures at ages 10 and also at ages 14, so over a 4-year period. There's some interesting findings there. We found that teams with the most gratitude by the end of the 4-year period had showed these 4 differences, others as well, but these are the most significant. They gained 15% more of a sense of meaning in their lives. They became 15% more satisfied with their life overall, as well as with the specific domains in their life. 70% increase in happiness and hopefulness for the future, and a 13% drop in negative emotions, and a 15% drop in depressive symptoms. Now, we haven't published this yet, but it's again suggesting both immediate as well as long-term benefits for those who start out grateful. So, again, reasons to be optimistic as we continue this line of research. Now, what I'd like to do, and some of the studies that we propose to conduct over the next couple of years, how can we incorporate gratitude into prevention? Not just looking at correlates of all sorts of outcomes, but also is it something that can be used with at-risk population? Now, we know from the decades of research on learned optimism that learned optimism reduces the risk for depression in kids who would otherwise be depressed. Is there an equivalent for gratitude? I've always been curious about this. Is there a counterpart to the learned optimism, to the optimistic attributional style? Is there a grateful attributional style? Is there something such as learned grateful? How might this be different from learned optimism? Where you teach kids to think not optimistically, but gratefully, by giving credit to others for good outcomes that happen to them, recognizing the role of others' positive outcomes. What might be some benefits of grateful attributional thinking, and can this be incorporated into prevention programs as well as optimism? And I think that would be a very interesting comparison to make. Some of the gratitude curriculum that is used with kids helps them to think more gracefully by focusing on benefits they have received. So to be asked, right, when someone has done something to help you out, what's your response to receiving benefits? What did they do to help you? Ask them, to what degree did the person try to help you on purpose, intentionally? That's where gratitude emerges from. Essentially, that people are going out of their way, some cost to themselves, perhaps time or effort or money or whatever, and that gratitude increases the degree to which we perceive their help to be intentional. How much were you benefited by this person's help? Recognizing the benefits you've received. How does this make you feel? So, trying to, magnify, amplify grateful thinking patterns as a way of increasing overall person's tendency to respond to benevolence with gratefulness. So that's just a little sampling there to give you a few ideas of the things we're trying to do. Okay, I think I've got about 5 minutes or so left, so I'm going to try to wrap it up and have some time for some questions. So some of the new research, particularly with respect to practices, I put into a book which will be coming out in March entitled Gratitude Works. It's actually, that's not the latest cover, so the subtitle has been changed. It's 21 Days to Emotional Prosperity. 21 days is based on one of our journaling studies, which can go for 3 weeks, 21 days. And this book, compared to Thanks, is really focused on practices for gratitude, for gratefulness. Of course, it's research-based, but it also really fleshes out what sort of journaling practices work. We know that not all journaling is equal. Not all people equally benefit from the same sorts of instructions, gratitude journaling. So I have a chapter on journaling for gratitude. I have a chapter on other techniques, such as gratitude letters and visits. There's a chapter on spiritual disciplines for gratitude. Not the usual ones like prayer, for example, meditation, but things like fasting, solitude, silence, testimony, some non-typical spiritual practices or disciplines. How these might deepen a sense of grace. There's a chapter on overcoming obstacles, where I really focus on resentment and entitlement, the cultivation of humility as a way, as an antidote for overcoming these obstacles. There's a chapter on suffering and redemption, creating gratitude in the face of difficult life circumstances. So I'm excited about this. I think it's a better book than Thanks. I think it breaks new ground. I think I've learned a lot about gratitude in the last 5 years. I think it's reflected in the nature of this book. Now, I think I'm going to skip over that one. I think there's a lot of ways in which we can practice gratitude, different types of exercises that are really discussed throughout the book. But I'm going to go to this one right here because this is really the cornerstone for the foundation. The final chapter is on using 7 different daily practices in the context of gratitude journaling to cultivate a deeper sense of gratefulness, and it's a 21-day program. So what people are asked to do is to try out one of these practices each day on a 7-day rotating basis. So on day number 1, you do the 3 blessing exercise. And people are familiar with using, the research on positive intervention. Then we have used different instructions over the different studies we've done for gratitude journaling, where we focus on writing down names of people who have provided us with benefits. We have specific instructions which usually do gifts. We rely on a couple other techniques where people focus on something that they positive in their lives now for which time is running out. We call that the scarcity or the future effect. The George Bailey effect you might be familiar with is when people focus on losing something that is very valuable to them. Imagine what would happen if you had not met your spouse, for example. So instead of focusing on the presence of the positive, which is what gratitude journaling normally does, the George Bailey effect focuses on the absence of the positive. So they've shown that's a very effective way to increase gratitude. Gratitude letter visit, everybody's familiar with, and then bad to good is a particular way of comparing a very negative, dark time of a person's life to where they are now. And the result is a type of comparison thinking, counterfactual thinking, which is another technique that's shown effective in increasing gratitude sustainably over time. So we have a matrix like this where you repeat it for 7 days, 3 weeks, 21 days, rotating basis. And the idea is that the same practice may not work for all people. Sonia Livermercy has shown that different people gravitate toward different sorts of practices. And this gives a person a chance to try out that which ones are more or less effective for them. So that's the cornerstone of the book. It's really focused on how to create more gratitude. I think we've got to the point now where we have to do less convincing people that gratitude matters. Now we explain how gratitude works and how to get more of it. And that's the essence of this book. Some years ago, in fact, year 2000, I was at a conference in Dallas, Texas, and Sir John Templeton was at the conference. I'll never forget the time he got up from his chair, and there was discussion going on about gratitude and practicing gratitude. And he said, how can we get 6 billion people around the world to practice gratitude? Well, now, of course, the population is around 7 billion. We have to increase this, but that's the goal. I think that's a very worthy goal. It's a big vision that he had. And he was known for big visions. I think the research and the practice is moving us there. I'm trying to do my part. I'm only one person though, so we need the help of others. It's great to see these 14 projects being funded in 8 graduate students. And that's the start. That's a small piece of the puzzle, but that's another big, I think, way of making progress towards this substantial goal. So that's the current status of science and practical gratitude.
So thanks a lot, Bob.
You're welcome, Dave. Thank you.
You bet. We've received a number of questions, and Bob, if you're up for it, I have a few that I'll read to you.
I'll do my best.
All right, sounds great. The first one comes from Bob, another Bob, actually, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It happens to be my hometown. And his question is, if gratitude is not a tactic for being happier per se, what motivation do people have to improve their gratitude or to teach gratitude?
Yes, that's a very good question. And, I don't want to overstate the case. I say it that way, I think, just to draw that comparison. I do think it is certainly a strategy of becoming happier, but I think it's more than that. And if I didn't convey that, that's my shortcoming. I think it can be, it should be. It certainly does matter for happiness. And I wouldn't underestimate the power of happiness either. We know that it does bring very good outcomes in a person's life over a long period of time. I'm just suggesting that by limiting to that, it's not enough. It's like, well, if gratitude doesn't make me happier, then I'm going to stop practicing it. Even though it might make me more useful, it might make me more, it might improve my relationships, which can actually make you happier. I'm just suggesting that at a trait level, it's a virtue that is its own reward, in addition to bringing happiness. So I don't want to limit it to a tactic, to a strategy, like, drinking a bottle of wine might make you happier. So it would for a short period of time, but it won't be a sustained, enduring level of happiness. And I think there's benefits to gratitude that go beyond happiness in terms of the pro-social, in terms of generosity, in terms of kindness, in terms of making you a better person, nice person to be around. Or the personal happiness may not be the ultimate goal there. So I'm just suggesting that we look at it in terms of some of the other outcomes that it might be associated with and go beyond that.
Oh, that's great. Okay, thank you very much, Bob. Appreciate that. There's a couple questions that came in related to business, and wondering if you could tell us just a little bit more about what you're familiar with in terms of how gratitude is being studied and practiced in business.
Yeah, there's very little research. We wanted to make that a component of the larger initiative. I wanted to accept proposals by people working in organizations and workplaces. I think that's a huge gap that exists in the literature, and I think that's an important area that really has been ignored. There's nothing else that I know of. There's a little bit of talk about it in the context of leadership, for example, as a trait that successful leaders show is gratefulness. There's a lot of what I call editorializing, saying that how it's important in workplaces to show gratitude, that sort of thing, without any sort of systematic research on what would happen, if we did gratitude interventions in workplaces, what might those look like, and what would be some of the outcomes. So I think that's a huge opening there for future research.
That's great. We have another question, Robert. There's a whole bunch of questions, so we're going to try to get to as many as we can. A question from Rachel Green from Western Australia. Rachel, thanks for being in here. The question is gratitude and the work of gratitude, the application of it, a valid treatment for depression?
Well, interesting, there's a number of studies that are suggesting that it can be, particularly if we're talking about more milder forms of depression, not necessarily depression that requires medication, but milder forms of depression. There's very good research on that. If you just look at some of that up, look at some of the work of Phil Watkins at Eastern Washington University, published a couple of articles in the Journal of Positive Psychology on a depressed individual and how a gratitude, what he calls a positive memory bias for gratitude, can be effective in reducing symptoms of depression as well as preventing future depression. Looking at some of the research on memories of individuals who have been through not necessarily traumatic events, but personally upsetting events, they call open memories. Something that's happened to you in the past that you're continuing to live with, to rehearse, to ruminate on, and people who are able to process that from a grateful point of view. We've done some studies as well where we have people write about traumatic events using a series of different instructions, one of which is to try to focus on benefits, perhaps some strengths that you've learned, perhaps ways in which you are better now than you used to be. We have a whole set of questions, probes, to get at people, help them think, process the event from a more grateful perspective. And we show it can be very effective, as Phil has shown as well in his research, that intrusions are reduced, that the memories become more closed over time, that the symptoms of depression decrease over time. So, yeah, there's an increasing number of studies showing that grateful thinking, training oneself to think gratefully, can be an effective way of dealing with at least milder forms of depression.
That's great, Bob. Kind of a follow-up question or another angle on a related question here is, Bob, would you say highly optimistic people are more grateful, given that they believe that things will go well anyway? Will they be more thankful then or not if something good actually happens?
Well, there is a link, empirically it's demonstrated a link between optimism and gratefulness. It's not overwhelming in the sense that there appear to be optimistic people who are only average in gratitude and vice versa. We do find that gratitude tends to drive some of the other positive emotional states, whether it's happiness, whether it's hope, whether it's optimism, whether it's joy, because we know that through our intervention, that when you train people to take control of their emotional states by keeping a journal or writing a letter, that these other benefits seem to follow from changes in gratitude. And I hope that was optimism as well.
That's excellent. Okay, super. Another quick question coming to you, Rob, from Irene Nazero at Cambrian College in Sudbury, Ontario, Canada. Irene, the question to you, Rob, is you talked about gratitude curriculum at the elementary and secondary level. And her question was, can you just learn a little bit more about anything that's developed at the post-secondary level?
Yeah, I'm saying the same principles apply as well. And there's research out there that there is an author in research. She is in Australia. Her name is Carrie Howells. And I would recommend her book. She wrote a book titled Gratitude in Education. And it is for secondary, post-secondary levels as well, in terms of how can we apply some of the findings in the science of gratitude to educational settings, all the way up to universities, and how to teach gratitude, for instance, the difference in gratitude matters. So I'd recommend you take a look at some of her work. Carrie Howells, the book's entitled Gratitude in Education, A Radical Review. It was published earlier this year.
Oh, that's great. Another great resource. Thanks, Bob. Another question comes in. I think that question is as follows. Nikon and Merida therapy models, Japan modified for Western therapy, parentheses, have a strong base of gratitude. So are models from other countries included? Can you tell us more if other models are included from other countries, if they're included in your research and or your upcoming book?
Well, very much so. I do talk about Nikon, as I did in my 2007 book. I think it's a shame there's been so little research on Nikon. It just seems so promising. And in every lecture I get particular to health audiences, medical audiences, and psychological, psychiatric audiences, I talk about the importance of approach from Nikon, which really I think is a nice way of examining the specific ways in which we've been benefited from by other people. And I know you asked this question because you're familiar with it, so you know about this technique. I like to see more research on it. I think any sort of self-examination, I talk about this in a chapter on spiritual practices, the importance of examining oneself, examination of consciousness, do that on a systematic basis, whether it's respect to the traditional. Not many of us have the motivation to undertake a traditional intensive Nikon analysis, where you go away for a weekend and you spend 24 hours thinking about all the things that your mom did for you when you were 50 years old. Not many of us have the ability to do that, but I think some modified form of Nikon is very effective at helping people realize the ways in which they've been benefited by others, and then looking at how they have benefited others and seeing the difference, the gap between what they've received and what they've given. I think it's hugely important. And some of the studies that have published, not very much, but just very impressive in its ability to, cultivate a gratitude consciousness, desire to give back as well, which is a third component of Nikon. So that's a great question. I'd love to see more work on this topic.
That's great. That's awesome. By the way, that question came in from Kat Barkley. Thanks, Kat. We have just a couple minutes here, and I want to throw in one more question. It's a follow-up to the question about gratitude being helpful in servicing depression. And so the question came in just a little bit differently. Regarding gratitude interventions in depression, are there any potential pitfalls that we should be aware of? That's from Kevin Sinclair.
Right. Well, I think, anytime we start to think about in terms of dealing with distressing emotions, the temptation is to gloss over those and not to really deal fully with the magnitude, of the depth of the depression, and try to replace it quickly with some sort of positive, optimistic thinking. I think one of the big questions behind, positive psychology in general, why it's been criticized or has been criticized, is for failing to deal appropriately with emotions across the spectrum from the negative to the positive. But I think when I see the research, it suggests that, in the context of working through the negative emotions, a person gets to the point where they want some sort of growth. They come to the point and they say, okay, I've been through this. This is how I've changed. how I'm better. I've appreciated this. They start to use the language of gratitude, and we've got to be sensitive to that when we deal with clients. We look for opportunities to see where gratitude might shine a light, might shine a new perspective on their struggle in a way in which is, embracing of the reality of what they're going through, but offers them a new perspective, a new hope, and it enables them to get some ownership over their emotional state. And that's what I've seen in my research and in talking to people. And I see this transformational potential, the nature of gratitude. But first of all, as the reader, as the listener suggested, there are potential downfalls there if we suggest it's an easy way out, if we suggest that it's an easy reversal to make, because we know that it's not particularly in the face of a more serious or deeper level of depression.
That's great, Bob. That's great. And I have to share with you a series of comments that came in that are apropos here today, and then one final one that also I thought was great. First of all, the ones that came in from a whole bunch of people were simply, "Thank you, Bob." So there's gratitude being practiced by our IPPA members as we speak. So I thought that was awesome. And then leadership by example. Our president, Bob Valorant, another Bob, who said, "Hey, Bob, nicely done."
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, isn't that great? That's awesome. So our president's on the phone.
I'll tell you what, we study experiencing gratitude and expressing it. We don't study enough what it feels like to receive the gratitude.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, it feels pretty good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I want to thank you again, Bob, for joining us. And I also just congratulate you again on the highly anticipated new book. And all of us are eager to get an advance copy, or at least order it in advance, of Gratitude Works, 21-day program for creating emotional prosperity. Bob, thanks again.
Thank you, Dave. Pleasure's all mine. You can have it.
Yeah, you absolutely. So in the spirit of thanks, I just want to thank our executive director again, Dr. James Spolowski, for his update and everything he does for IPPA, which is much of the time behind the scenes. He's a real hard worker and a great guy. I want to thank Gene Carey and Kathy Sakil for their work and helping with the technology, and Rev Rebele, who is doing some great work and helping us line up presentations for this coming year. So we have some good ones coming up. So I want to also let everyone know again that we will be providing a recording of this talk to all IPPA members. The recording will be posted on our IPPA members only website by early next week. And I'm happy to announce that the next speaker in our series is Dr. Richard Davidson, the University of Wisconsin. Fascinating research he's conducted over time, many with Dalai Lama's team, and just phenomenal. So we're looking forward to having him on. Mark your calendars, January 31st, and more information will be coming soon. So thank you again for participating in our Positive Psychology Leader Series. Remember to tell your friends and colleagues about IPPA. I'm David J. Paulane, and wherever you are in the world, make it a great day or night. Bye, everyone. Thanks so much.